Welcome to another episode of Just One More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey, Kurt, and Greg.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
You can find us online at justonemorefix.com or on Twitter at justonemorefix. If you like us, head over to iTunes or to Google Play and give us a rating and a comment. In this episode, we're going to talk about running con games and one-shots. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix. Welcome to Just One More Fix. So, as you heard, we are going to talk about running con games and one-shots. But before that, I don't know if we have any announcements other than Gen Con badges are almost sold out for all the weekdays now, I believe. So if you haven't got it, I'm telling you, you've got to get in there, get on the website and get it bought because you're not going
to get one.
And then the will call line is going to be ridiculous this year. So if you can get there early and get it the day before or the night before, I would definitely recommend doing that because will call is going to be difficult this year. All righty. We have any other announcements?
I'm running it at Games on Demand, Indie Press, first time.
So you set up your times at Games on Demand?
It's going to be on Friday, basically all day. I think starting at 10 a.m. local time, going through to probably 5 or 8 p.m. or whatever that time slot is there. I told them if they need to move me later, that's fine. I just don't want to do earlier because I got to drive in.
Right. All right. Right on. So if you're interested in playing in some of Kurt's games and seeing how terrible of a gamers we are, sit in and head up to Games on Demand and check out what he's got going on. So what system are you running?
We're doing Frank Chadwick's Space 1889 with the original 1988-1989 rule set. Not that new fangled version, but the original version.
Right.
Yeah.
Right on. So do you have a quick pitch for what your game is you could reveal, or is that a no-no?
Oh, no, you're going to have to come and see. But it is it's a action-packed, full of daring do, that kind of thing. If you're looking for a deep intellectual kind of thoughtful adventure, this isn't it. It's
Is it going to be a 2-hour slot or a 4-hour slot?
It's going to be a 2-hour slot. So plenty of chances.
Right on. So yeah, definitely. So head up on to Games on Demand. It's one of our favorite events to go frequent at Gen Con. So if you haven't been there, it's a great place to get exposed to games you may not normally try. And it's only 2 hours, so there's not a huge commitment to time-wise.
Or if you got completely hosed in the lottery and didn't get any of the games that you wanted, you're like, well, what am I going to do now for 4 days? Head over to Games on Demand. You get a boarding pass. It's random. Mm-hmm. Play some weird stuff. I will say there's a lot of systems and different games that we've found at specifically Games on Demand that I actually like a whole lot and that I probably wouldn't have ever got or been exposed to without having to be like, oh, well, this one's open. Let's just try this one or whatever. So good times there. So definitely check it out. Games on Demand. The other thing that we have to announce is there will be some Just One More Fix swag at Gen Con this year. So our badge ribbons and that kind of stuff have came in. So look for our Twitter feed. We'll be announcing stuff on there and probably on Facebook as well. So then that's at Just One More Fix. We're easy to find on there. Look for updates and we'll be handing those out. And you guys, I think we're going to do a meetup as well at some point. We're trying to figure that out and schedule it. So look for that in the next couple weeks and we'll mention that here on the show as well. I think that's all the main announcements that we have. So Lacey just walked in. They don't think they can hear that. She says hello.
This is Greg's first time on the mic. So we're going to introduce Greg real quick. You've been in our gaming group for a long time. I've known Greg for a super long time, but how long have you been gaming for?
About 25 years, give or take.
Okay. And what was your first RPG?
Second edition D&D.
Right on. So would you say that is your most informative game as far as role-playing games?
More or less. Second edition D&D and then getting into the Palladium stuff early on and some of the White Wolf, Old World of Darkness.
Right on.
Are you more of a GMer or a player?
Definitely more of a player. Everybody, it's much easier if I play and don't GM.
Right on. Sounds good.
I want people to have fun, so.
Are there any other questions that we ask? I can't remember now. It's been a while. Do you have a favorite RPG? I don't know if we asked that one, but I'm going to ask it now.
That's pretty much what's your favorite to play in?
It's probably one of the flavors of D&D, most likely third edition.
Right on.
But I do enjoy a variety. That's just kind of the go-to.
Sounds good. All righty. So that's Greg.
Hi, Greg.
Indeed.
Hi.
All right. So today we're going to talk about running con games and also one-shots kind of ties into this because I feel like they're very similar in some ways, except the main difference would be in a con game you have some kind of a time constraint generally.
Oh, I'd say there's a big difference with a con game.
Well, how so?
Well, one of the number one things that we keep hammering, and I know a lot of podcasts do, is know your players. You have no freaking clue who's going to sit down in front of you. In point of fact, that's kind of the point. You have no idea who's coming.
Okay, I'll agree with that, but I think you also have to make the conceit that if you are like in a con sense, you've sold tickets like a Gen Con or whatever, right? And people are coming, you've made some kind of a pitch. This is the system I'm using. So people are coming to this game knowing that at least it's a theme or a style of RPG that they like.
Yeah. I mean, they might know you, but that was just the exact opposite of the way it normally plays out. I mean, I don't know about most people's gaming groups, but they're kind of like one at a time for me. You know, it's a personal thing.
Well, yeah, I agree with that.
Here you are, you're basically going out to the gaming equivalent of going out to a bar to pick somebody up for 2 hours. You know, it's like, you know, it sounds really seedy when I say it.
Hotel room.
Yeah. It sounds really seedy when I say it that way. Forget I said that. But yeah, so I think that's an important difference is you've got to be kind of person neutral because you have no idea who's going to sit down.
Don't you think it's helpful, though, that you make all of the characters for that game?
Well, yeah, but you can make a car, but how are they going to drive it?
Yeah, but if you make a Porsche, there's
You're
only
going
one
to
way
drive it like a Porsche.
Or like a rental at
I was
that.
going to say,
there's
it's
two
one
ways.
shot,
It's
drive it
like
like a
Grandpa
rental.
style or
Okay, no, I see that.
it's limiting. Anyway.
Okay, so I think I agree that there's probably some conceits you have to make in how you set up your plot because you don't have all these personalized bits because you don't know the people that are sitting down. So that's a valid difference in that if you're running a one shot for your players that you know, there are things you're going to incorporate that you know so and so likes or doesn't like.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily know that at a con game. So I agree with that. I'll give you that one. So part of the reason we're doing this is because, as we mentioned, that you're going to be at Games on Demand, and we play tested your scenario, and there's some things that we learned about, and we just thought we'd share some ideas because I'm being a little self-serving here for the RPG community.
Really?
I read
You don't say.
on, also for the RPG community as a whole. I mean, you know, I'm like,
It's about the
This is for the good of the people.
exactly.
I understand.
But they mentioned at Gen Con this year how there's several underserved games. And all of these, obviously, these games are successful because people are buying them. So I also thought we might do this to lay it out to maybe boost someone's confidence or to say, hey, here's some things if you're thinking about this from some other people that, you know.
So do you have like a list?
I do right here,
Oh,
conveniently.
interesting. Do tell.
So I thought, well, we're just going to kind of run through these, and I mean, we may go off topic and kind of some things, but there's some very specific things that I wrote down and from one shots that I had planned out, but also things that because when we play tested your scenario, I very specifically had a piece of paper down next to me to like make notes and jot things down and be like, think about this, not this, time constraints, whatever, you know. So the first thing is, I think when you decide you're going to do this, whether this is at a con or for your table of players, you have to make that time commitment of not necessarily time commitment, but time constraints. Because in your scenario we were like, oh, this is going to be a 2-hour game. And when we were playing, I was writing down in the margins of my paper of times. And I feel like the way you run a one shot at home for a 6-hour session or an 8-hour session is way different than you run a game for a 2-hour session or a 4-hour session.
Definitely. Because when I did with the other group, when I did the Harry Potter one, and I knew that we had to be done at 6, we absolutely positively had to be done at 6 p.m. People were walking out the door because they had other things to do. That wasn't very hard. Because I knew we were picking it back up again in like another 3 weeks.
Right. So maybe you weren't going to be on
so-
at a really good ending point, but you could still make it work.
Yeah, we faded to black for a commercial break, basically, and left it in the middle of something. And it's completely different. And it's one of those things you don't realize how long it takes to do things until you have to do them in 2 hours.
So I think that sets up the initial thing is the whole idea of media res, and
Oh, yeah.
which means it's Latin for start off and do it as far as you can. This may not be the exact translation, but
In
that's
the
what it
middle
means.
of the action.
That's the essence of it, right? So you're going to start off as far into it as you can go. And here's a couple of things I think that I was thinking about this is that you already know that the people that are sitting down at your con game table have already said, I want to play aces and eights, or I want to play mouse guard, or whatever the game is that you're running, right? So they've already bought in that sense. You don't need to get any player investment because they already have said, I don't even know you, and I'm sitting at your table.
So in other words, in this case, it's not a GM know your players. It's a players make sure you read the description and know your GM, and the GM should write a good description of what it's about.
But also at the same time, don't be afraid to try something new. That's one of the things that I have found to be the most fun is to just go try new games. And we've had great success with some of them at Games on Demand. Almost every experience we've had has been a great time.
And one thing I didn't realize is there's a 400 character maximum on your game
Yeah.
description for Games on Demand. So so when I sat down to fill that out, I was like, 400 characters? I mean, I nearly like laptop flipped. Well, of course I wouldn't because it's a very expensive thing to replace. But I was like, 400 characters? That's it? And so I had to pare it down to that.
That's like 7 tweets. That should be more than enough.
Done. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's interesting
This
though
is my
because
skeptical look.
no, it's more fun. I think I always thought it would be interesting to try and pare things down to the true essence of what it is. So you keep editing it smaller as
I had a history teacher that had an interesting concept. I know you're looking at me with that face because you know that I don't like history, but I liked this guy. He was interesting. He wore bow ties a lot before that was cool. Or cooler.
I don't know.
Less cool.
Before the Doctor Who guy came along that wears the bow ties
There you
all
go.
the time, Mr. Matt Smith, bringing it back. Anyway,
Okay.
back to the point. He had this concept where you would take the whole whatever it was you were reading and you had to summarize it in 25 words. So you would start like with a section of your book. By the end of it, you were supposed to take the entire chapter
good idea.
of that history book and sum it up in 25 words. What are the 25 essential words?
I think it's a really cool idea. I thought it would be cool to have to write a big research paper and then 25 pages and then edit down to 10. Now edit to 5.
Well,
now edit
that's
to
an
2.
abstract. Isn't that what they call that? Or
But
whatever it is?
to what is the essence of what you're trying to do?
It's an abstract.
You know what I mean? But I don't know. It's I don't feel like an abstract really. It's more like a distillation. Do you know what I'm saying?
I disagree. I think it's an abstract. But
So-
that's okay.
But so that's very, very valid, is that you have to distill down what it is that you're trying to deliver in your message there.
Wow, pointedly delivered. But no, and that was the first big surprise to me. And then the other big surprise, not big surprise, but question is, are you going to volunteer and do other things? It would seem like, well, no, you're volunteering your time to come GM, but then you think about all the other logistical things that
it's
have to
huge.
happen. And so I volunteered on Saturday to come in and run the table, help not run the table. Obviously, I don't know what the freak I'm doing, but I've played a couple homecoming dances at school. You know, I mean, it can't be too much worse than that.
If I volunteer to be a water boy at Games on Demand, can I dump the cooler full of ice water on you when you're done with your game?
Absolutely.
That's really all I need.
I don't think this is a good idea. Part of me says yes, that it would be hilarious. Part of me also says I don't want to get arrested.
Only if he gets a
It's just
total party
water.
kill.
Oh, there you go.
All right. So along with this media res idea, when you're talking about 2 hours,
Yeah.
you really have to start at the beginning of the plot. There's no need to say, well, why are you guys on this forbidden desert island?
No, it is 4 sentences there's a player. I'm even going to pare down the rules that we're going to use to. These are the 4 basic things that you need to know, like on a piece of laminated freaking paper.
We'll come back to game aids.
oh my gosh.
But
Yeah.
as far as time constraints, to make sure that you deliver a full experience, that's really what the goal is in one of these gaming sessions. Is in a one shot is to deliver a fun experience that everybody enjoys, but also I think to feature the parts of the features of the system that you're playing. But you have to get to that action.
Because you need 4 sentences to tell them this is who you are, this is what you're doing, this is why you're here. Skip that whole first hour that I normally do for the games and say this in the middle of the action. This is what brings you to this point. Whether I speak it to them or they read it, I don't know. But
the thing is they don't have. I think that you don't have to feel like it's forced because everybody's made the concession that I've come here to sit down for 2 hours. I realize this isn't like the most full experience that I might get in an 8-hour session or something, but that I'm here to have fun. And I'm here to play, and let me choose my pre-generated characters, which I think is almost a must because you just don't have the time. All that time you spend creating a character, you're going to lose from the actual gaming.
this is
Well, there's a couple of indie games that have very, very short
loose character. Yeah, I
character
agree.
creation, like that.
World of
not World of
Dough, the Temple of Dough.
Yeah, Temple of Dough. So that one, you can figure out.
Well, okay, those are features of that game, and that I think will go back to making sure whatever system you choose, right, you have to make sure that you are featuring the parts of that game that make it what it is.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. You've got to be like, if you're doing Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition, you can't sit down and talk about synergies for half an hour.
No.
You got to pare it down to your D20. This is what you need to roll, man, and go with that.
I think that comes back to another thing, which is actually the second thing on my list is system mastery. Whatever system it is that you choose to run, you've got to know it well enough. Maybe there's some minutia you may not know 100%. But you know where that's at in the book to reference to get a quick rules clarification or whatever. But you need to not be stumbling around trying to fumble through the book to find out what the bonus is for this extra reach or whatever. Have all that, most of that you can front load into the character sheets and into your stat blocks for your monsters if those are a thing or whatever. But you need to have a solid grasp of the actual gaming system itself so that you're not wasting time fumbling around trying to find the fiddly bits to how this thing works.
Yeah, so use a system that you know well. I've used the Space 1889 Game Designers Workshop D6 dice pool system for a homebrew. I played it for probably 6 or 7 years when I was younger. I've got there's a couple of things that in this kind of play I have to take account for, but yeah, you got to use something, like I would never roll out with Legend of the Five Rings for a con game, considering even my first time running it was horrifically difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you have to take that into account with your player base as well. Because if you've got somebody that's coming in that just read your description and said, oh, this steampunk thing sounds kind of neat, I'm going to jump in on it. Yeah, if the Space 1889 mechanic is simple enough, yes, you can do that. But if you're trying to throw them into something with crazy mechanics, like the Legend of the Five Rings, then you're going to run into problems.
Mm-hmm. Right on. So you need to be able to convey those ideas of how the game works easily and clearly as well.
Strip pieces out.
Absolutely.
That don't make it no one's going to be doing any scientific research.
Well, let me. Okay,
don't even make it an option.
Okay, so let me back up a little bit here, and I kind of made a list of things, and I thought in my mind, why is it that I have sat down to con games before? So the first reason was
James.
It just looked fun.
Okay.
The second reason is because it's a game that I can't necessarily play at home. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like my gaming group doesn't like this game. I'm going to go. So that ties back into when it's the fun thing, everybody's sitting down largely to have fun, right? But when you're playing a game that you can't normally play at home, I think that ties directly back into making sure that you're featuring parts of the system that make that game what it is. Because that's why they came to sit down.
Yeah.
Is to play that game because they can't play those cool mechanical things or themes that they can't get that fix at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
The third one is, this is a big one for us. This is why a lot of games that I've sat down to is because I haven't played this game before. I really like the ideas behind it, and I want to see how it works.
It's like a demo for an RPG.
Like an academic interest, or
some of
it's
it
just like with a board game when you go on the trade floor and you're like, oh, well, this, Arkham Asylum looks neat. And then you sit down for 15 minutes and you give the game a run through. So it's the exact same concept.
Okay.
Like, oh, okay, Dread looks really cool. Let's sit down and just see how it goes in a short session.
That's part of it, but also some of it is we picked up Don't Rest Your Head, and I really absolutely love the idea behind that game and that whole world and the concept of it. And I was having a hard time wrapping my head around how you run that game and how it actually works. So we already owned the game, but I needed to sit down and see it done in front of me to really grasp what it was.
To capture the flavor of
exactly.
it. Okay.
Am I seeing this the right way? Am I interpreting?
Made the RPG.
No.
Okay.
No.
So I've got a copy of Made the RPG.
We've been through the Made thing.
And I know I
like to
still
bring
have
up
not
every
been
time.
able to find the voice to run it. It's been I've even mapped out so anyway.
So
yeah.
I would suggest that you get in on a Made game.
That's a perfect example of how you can get
I'm gonna
in
have to.
and try and find it. Now,
I said the same thing to Carrie about Clockwork Dominion.
the other thing is, though, is sometimes it's hard to find those games to get into because they may fill up fast, or in the case of some games, they're just not being ran. So
Which I think brings us full circle back to your list of games that are...
I actually have one more.
No?
The other reason I've seen,
We're not going to find out yet.
well, the other
The
reason
suspense is killing me.
that, what are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Just keep moving.
Carry on.
Oh, the fourth reason is, and I've seen it happen a couple times, is that people sit down to play games because there's someone at the table that they're with that wanted to play that game. So they're sort of there by association.
Yeah.
Not that that's good or bad.
They're
it's
just maybe game curious. Right?
Well, but like we went to the con together, and you really like this game, and whatever, it may not be my thing, but I'll just come give it a shot. Not that they're totally bought into it, but they're there still to have a good time. So in my mind, those are the four main reasons, I guess, that people would sit down to a con game, I think. But I think that those directly tie into what we mentioned about making system mastery and making sure that you're featuring the pieces of the game. Because like when you think about, like, well, I guess Aces and Eights is a great example. Like if you're wanting to learn that game and see it played for the first time, the way the shot clocks and everything work.
Aces and Eights is a Old West role-playing game by Kenzer and Company.
Right. But also, more importantly, it's not a Weird West game. It's an actual like historical Western.
Yeah.
Well, it's sort of alternative history, but
it's an alternative.
But yeah,
history.
there's no
magic and zombies.
Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of pieces of that game that make it what it is. Like the shot clocks, the way they work. If you haven't seen them, like it has the coolest mechanic for trying to shoot someone. And that's the feature of or not the feature, but one of the big features for that game.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. You said to try a game you never tried before. Am I doing the public a disservice by running a decades-old game by a company that's not in business anymore?
No, I don't think so at all, because I'm not certain of it, but I would be willing to bet that you can probably get that game on RPG.com.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Or RPG
drive through or whatever,
yeah.
right? So it's probably still out there to get a hold of. If it's not, you can't get the PDF. There's loads of used copies that you can get. You know, there's a couple trading groups that I'm part of. Half price books, all this stuff. But I would be willing to bet you that most people haven't ever been exposed to that game before, as far as the system of it. I mean, they've probably been exposed to Steampunk maybe, but not that specific game. But the other thing is Steampunk is huge right now.
Yeah, it was very cutting edge and out there back in 1989. We're like, what is this? And
Exactly. So I think you're exactly in the right vein, because it's something that's not, you don't see it all the time. It's not, just because it's not new doesn't mean it's not new to someone else.
Plus, I mean, there are people paying money to play first edition Dungeons and Dragons at Gen Con. So I don't think you can be like,
Valid
this game is too old. Like, somebody loves this game and really wants to play it at the con and is going to be super excited to see you running it.
I'm like, oh my God, somebody's running it.
But I would be willing.
I'm hoping that's the reaction, and that's.
I would be willing to bet you that there's a fair amount of people that sit down that have no idea what Space 1889 is, and that just think it's a cool idea and fun to try out.
Yeah,
because that's what's happened for a lot of the games we've sat down to play. It's like, well, this looks pretty neat. Well, why not?
Yeah, that's why I kept it short to 2 hours too. I didn't want people to get trapped into 4 hours for something maybe they don't like.
Well, that's true. Yeah. But it is, I think it's an easy win. As long as you start off at the right spot and you push the action and that kind of stuff, I think it's easy to have a session be fun in 2 hours.
So that when we get to Game Aids, that's where this is going to shine. That's all I'm saying.
What was the thing that you wanted me that I walked right on past?
The list of games that are like on demand that people are wanting to be run. You said you had a list. I want to know what's on the list.
It's like the McCarthy thing. I've got a list, right? And he never reads it. He never reads who's on the list. Now he's moving with slow,
I'm really curious.
Careful deliberation.
Because when you look at the list of games that are being run, it feels almost inexhaustible.
Well, also it's not.
Yeah,
it's underserved. So there might be like 6 of these games, but we know that 800 people try to get tickets to it.
Okay,
does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I still will. One day I will run Maid.
I just need to know what other games that I'm supposed to be needing to play that I don't know about.
Most of them were games that we had heard of or that we play, but they were ones that aren't like really, really big name games. Like they're not a Dungeons and Dragons, they're not a Pathfinder,
God, when we ran, it was a little while ago. We ran a game called Warbirds, the one about the floating islands and the world. Yeah. I'm really disappointed I forgot about that one because I ran across the rule book again today and I was like, oh my gosh, I had so much fun writing that.
I actually saw some tweets recently about Warbirds.
Carrie was the movie star
out or something, but
the movie star pilot. Where everywhere where she went, there was like press reporters wanting to take her photo, and
that was the Pulp game, right?
Yeah, that Pulp era. Yeah, no, and it's all with World War II airplanes except with floating islands.
All right,
really interesting dogfighting.
I have some bad news for you guys. I can't find it, and I don't want to spend a ton of time finding it. But I can tell you some that I knew that were on the list.
Okay,
the number one that was on there, which I thought was sad but really cool that it's popular, is 7th Sea 2nd Edition. So that was very cool because, that Kickstarter raised, I think, was it over $1 million?
Probably.
I think 1.2 million.
My Lord.
Some crazy amount of money.
Bailed out the country of Greece with that kind of Kickstarter.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
But they don't have enough people running it there. There were more people that wanted tickets that they couldn't get them, so they needed more GMs for it. Apocalypse World was on there. I think the reason is that there's a lot of people that want to try it.
Okay.
But there's just not enough people there's not enough games for them to get into.
Is that specifically just base Apocalypse World? Because there are like
I don't know.
Hacks.
Now, I don't know if it was broken out that way or if they just lumped them all together as in this is powered by the apocalypse. I don't really know. I just the article that I saw, and it may have been a forum post where a guy just like pulled a bunch of data and compiled it all together.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think now. Dread was on the list.
I would so run a Dread game for a con. That would be so much fun.
I can't.
It was fun to play in.
I can't remember.
Which one Dread is?
It's the horror with the Jenga Tower.
Okay, I didn't get to play that one.
I tell you what, on a quick aside, there is no better way to build tension in a horror game than being like, I got to pull blocks out or this thing's going to fall over when you die, unless you're me, because I'm wicked good at Jenga.
Dread will be making a reappearance at HillCon, September 2017.
So I don't know. I'll try and do some hunting when this drops. I'll try and find the article and post it with it because it was really cool to see. And there were a lot of games that I was kind of surprised, but I think it makes sense in that there's not a lot being ran, but there's a lot more that want to play it that can't get into the games.
Okay.
Which is kind of what inspired, part of this or whatever. So we talked about media res and starting off as far as you can, being mindful of your time, because really I can't stress enough when we played in Kurt's playtest was that with 2 hours, holy crap, when we spent 15 minutes leading into the scenario, I was like, when you talk in terms of percentage of time, holy cow.
Because 15 minutes isn't that long if you're going to go for months.
Right.
But you've worked at 8 o'clock, we've got to be done.
Right.
It's like,
So just be ever mindful of that time.
I know.
And pre-gens, I think, is a must, unless it's a feature of the system, right?
Right.
All right, so let's talk about game aids and character sheets and all this that kind of stuff, like the physicality of the game. What do you guys think?
Okay, so when I sat down and went home and I meditated upon my failure, I sat down and went, okay,
For shame.
What would make this go, now that I've seen how it's failed, what would make it go better? And yeah, we would pre-generate the characters. I'm going to have them laminated.
Well, I don't think that was a failure for you. I think when we made those characters with the presumption that we were making characters that they would kind of become the.
Well, they are. They're the basis for the pre-gens.
Okay. So,
but I'm going to. But I'm going. Thank you. I'm going to type them up, and I'll put a character portrait with them. I will laminate them so they can be marked on. Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think I'm relatively strong with when I put my effort into it are maps, props, and game aids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I am going to, over the next week or two, I am going to game aid the out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just for the simple fact that, if there's a hill you're walking up, there's going to be a map for it. Okay. If there's sky galleons, which I realized in the aftermath, there wasn't time to put them in. I've got to put them in. If there isn't sky galleons, it's not.
Well, that's the thing. I think you need to distill, it goes back to distilling down what it is that makes that game, what makes Space 1889 Space 1889.
Yeah, you're going to have the Martians, shooting at you, and you're going to have a boarding action, and there's going to have to be this crash, and there's going to have to be this stuff. There are these features, including, the Victorian super science and this sort of stuff that have got to be there, and they've got to be obvious.
So you've talked about all these things that you want to make. Now, is there a certain point where, outside of character sheets, obviously, that's kind of a must, and maybe a simple rules sheet, like a reference sheet for mechanics, is there a point where you think it's too much props because you've only got 2 hours and you don't want to cause analysis paralysis as we study the cool maps and all the toys?
Well, it's got to be pared down. I'm viewing this like I would. Okay, so if I'm a social studies teacher, let's say, and I'm in a classroom and I have 50 minutes to walk you through World War I, because that's all the time that's allotted, I'm going to have all the maps and things that I need in the order in which I'm going to use them with optional tabs. Okay, sometimes classes go faster, sometimes they go slower. And I have to admit, it reminded me of the first time I ran classes, I went way over. I didn't have enough time. It is possible, but what you do is you distill it down to these are the critical items, and then you put little tabs, those little sticky tabs in your folder on everything that's optional. Okay, so let's say they went too quickly. Boom, here's another encounter that makes sense in terms of the thing.
Right.
It actually gives them something else. Their reward for moving quickly through it is they get something else that's going to help them later.
So when you're talking about doing that, you have it actually divided out, like here's critical event 1, and this is my tab for the 15-minute mark. And if we get there early, then I can do these 2 options in between this and the next 15-minute mark. It's divided out actually by the time allotted left in the session.
Yeah, if you remember when we played that homebrew high fantasy game, I had that giant binder with all those color-coded tabs going down it. Each one of those was these are critical people, these are critical events, these is stuff that's happening. So if we've hit the 3rd or 4th week, things are going to happen. I open it up to that point and go, these are the things that are currently happening. Okay. And so I'm just compressing that, putting it on an incredible amount of steroids and saying, now instead of saying weeks, 15-minute mark, 20-minute mark, a half an hour. And then being able to pull those out, because the last thing I want, because people are paying money, the last thing I want is to be done 20 minutes early.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right.
Just like with a class, you start on time, you end on time, and give them no downtime in the middle. They should leave thirsty for the soda machine.
Okay, so you mentioned all your tab system and everything else, and I think that works really well. But what you're talking about there is mainly in a more of an adventure gaming sense, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
I think you can also but in a larger sense, I think you can also use that in an investigative kind of a game as well, in that instead of having those are your core, those are your main encounters, you put those tabbies as your core clues. These are the things that have to be found for the players to advance our investigation or our plot or whatever it is. And then you have all this other things that you can intersperse in there to make things more interesting, to slow things down. If you got to speed things up, you cut them out. But I think that's exactly the right line of thinking, in that you can manage that pacing, because I think that's, again, time, which we're probably going to beat to death. But
well, because it's completely different than, I mean, we'll start whenever we start and we finish when everyone looks like they're about to fall off the table from being so tired. It's very organic. Yeah.
Can I add a completely useless point?
what's that?
Oh, tell
Because
me.
you know you need more of those in conversation.
Oh, bring it up.
So all of these things are relevant to the game that's going on, like the actual gamey game itself, not the theme.
The gamey game.
Yes. It's a very technical term.
All right. Okay, I get that.
We talked about it once here about how much is too much when it comes to like decorating and thematic stuff and whether or not you should dress up. And I've never ever seen it done at a con game. And I really think that it would be cool.
don't know.
No, but how neat would it be if you went to go to the Space 1889 table and the GM running the game was dressed in steampunk fashion with like a dirigible on the table?
I would
Dirigible, you
like
don't
to
put
see a pith helmet,
dirigibles
please.
Okay.
See?
Okay, so
helmet.
here's the thing.
Insane.
My take on the steampunk thing involves a lot fewer leather corsets, although considering my shape, they
You don't
probably
need to
should.
wear a leather corset.
I think you should wear at least 2.
And a lot more like
one
for
over your
instance-
head.
Okay, so I'm going to fess up here. I own a black frock suit. Okay. Ascot and everything, top hat. Well, I would hope everyone would, but I know apparently that's unusual. Everyone I know has one, but
Mine's apricot.
I guess quick shout out to Erin Whitehead. She just followed us on Twitter.
Thank you. And so I'm thinking that might actually be more appropriate. You know what I mean? I've got a set of brass goggles, but is that over the top?
No.
Well, I think it depends on what kind of a game you're running. If you're running but hang on, Space 1889, while it is a steampunk game, there are certain aspects of it that aren't as steampunky. I don't know if that's
It's
a word.
very first generation.
Yeah.
It was before a lot of it caught on, and it created the new aesthetic.
I like steampunk, so don't please no one take this the wrong way. But in Space 1889, there's not gears and bottles glued onto things artificially for no reason.
No, it's Victorian science fiction.
Exactly. It's
But it's happening in your imagination. So in mine, there's gears and bottles glued onto things.
right. But what I'm
You're
saying
doing it wrong.
is if you're if you're talking about dressing up as the game master, you should probably dress up in terms of the tone of what your game is. If your game is the
Really?
I
I've
don't
never
think
seen
you
it
should.
done.
I don't think you should be a clown.
I think- well, I
That's
don't-
what I'm saying. You've never seen it done, and I think
it
would
could be
awesome.
okay. Now here's I don't think
agree.
as long as the costume doesn't take away from the experience, it adds to it. So if your game takes place on a dirigible, right, and you dress up as a dirigible pilot, that would be pretty cool, right?
Okay, so more of a safari jacket, because I do have a
could be
late
cool.
19th century pith helmet.
Absolutely.
And
we'll have to come back and see how it went. But I do think it could definitely add to the experience. What I would do though is whatever character that you're say dressed up as, whether it's the dirigible pilot or the high adventurer in the
what about
pith
just
helmet
as
and all
a
that.
generic person in the world? Because I don't want to be a specific character because I'm the GM.
Right, but I think that
I'm skeptical.
it could be fun that okay, so let's
It's
just
just in the theme of the game. But like how much easier so when you sit down and you've only got 2 to 4 hours, you're asking people to look at these characters, be familiar with them, and then get into that special sort of gaming feel that you get with a unique game. How much easier would that be if I sat down at the table, you were
increases
dressed
immersion.
and in character as the GM? Like
So I stand up, I have my top hat on or my hat, and when they come to the table, instead of just sitting there and say, "Hey, hi, how you doing?" Stand up, ask them to please be seated, so we may begin,
Right.
and then just whip out the antique, not completely antique language,
right,
but just
No,
kind of.
well, the other thing is
That's what I'm saying. The
Here's
immersion.
think about this:
Immersion,
if you're
okay.
running a 2-hour game, how many NPCs do you really have
Specifically,
Of
do you
like-
need an actual count?
No,
'Cause
but
I
like-
think it's more like 25.
that are actually they're going to interact with?
Well, they might have to shoot some evil.
But okay,
Martians.
those are enemies. Those aren't like, but characters
Half a
that
dozen.
get portrayed. Okay, so there's not that many. So if you're let's just say your scenario takes place on this dirigible, right, and you dress up as the pilot, and the pilot plays a central role to delivering the mission or whatever it is, the premise of your game, right? And you're dressed up as that. I feel like that adds to it. You could do the thing where like you stand up and you tell them to tickets. Start with the antique, the old timey language.
Give me some old timey language.
but I feel like that could add to it. But I think that,
Robust verbal ejaculations.
I think that there is a certain point with that costuming idea where it starts to take away from things if it's too much.
Well, that's what I mean. I would probably go with the safari jacket, the white shirt and tie, and the pith helmet, or I would do the black frock suit with the top hat, and just stand up when they come in, take my hat off, and
So I think there's some cool potential there. I think it's a cool idea. I don't think I've ever seen it before. I think that we've seen something maybe along those lines, because when we played in a Dread game, the guy that ran it for us was very animated and very much acted out, kind of the gremlin characters that were in the game.
Yeah, he did a really good job.
And
at that.
it was definitely more immersive. I felt like more into the game because, like Greg said, in 2 hours, you really got to sit down and hit the game. It pulls you into it.
And actually, I think that's one of the things that the visual aids, like you're talking about with your maps and everything, would really help with. Because I'm looking at things kind of from writing the industrial or construction side of things. The more pictures I can put in there to get somebody's attention on it, the better off I am.
Like IKEA.
Picture is 1,000 words. Yeah. I mean, that's always true. And especially when you're trying to save time with this, if you throw a couple props out there, you don't have to necessarily...
Any visual shortcut is a good short, as long as it's relevant and moves the plot along. That is what you're saying. Maybe we could get some feedback from some listeners, too. That wouldn't go amiss either.
Right on. I agree. I feel like we've covered most of this outside of like specifics of plots that would be good to run as a one-shot versus not.
Yeah.
I mean, I think things that are simple and straightforward, if you have a very large, robust plot, you just got to streamline it down, and that goes without being a whole lot of explanation because of time constraints and whatever.
Yeah.
But outside of con games, we've played a fair amount of one-shots here. So let me just ask you, why one-shots? We see a lot of people...
Fun.
Okay.
Well, sometimes you don't want a fine wine that's been aged for decades. I mean, sometimes you just need a fizzy, like cherry Coke, right?
Right.
So that's what you need. You need a root beer float. You want something that's light, that's fluffy, that you don't have to think too much about.
Okay.
I think one-shots really can act as a palate cleanser as well. So if you've been doing the same long-term game, like your Chronicle game we played for, 3.5 years?
Oh my God, yeah.
When you get something, or any of the long-term games, you get those running for so long that you really just want to change the dynamic. Maybe for just a night, just to snap your head out of the old game, and then maybe go into something else. But that's how I've always looked at them.
I can see that. I guess something we didn't mention we should probably go back to and address is characters. I realize we're kind of all over the place in this episode, kind of rambling on, but I think it does bear mentioning that just like we talked about in the game itself, with the system, you want to feature the pieces of the system that make that game what it is. At the same time, you want to do the same thing with the characters. So if you're running a Firefly one-shot, you need to have a pilot, a captain, a mechanic. If you don't have those classic tropes for whatever genre you're running, then I feel like you're...
When everything that's on that character sheet needs to be used. Okay, I do not throw any red herrings at them with only 2 hours. I mean, if there's somebody with a mechanical skill, something should break. If there's somebody with a medical skill, somebody should get hurt. If there's somebody with a pilot skill, give them a chance to pilot so that everybody can have that spotlight. Because if there's 5 people at a table in only 2 hours, there's not a lot of spotlight time to go around.
Right. So do you think it's, as in terms of building characters, if you have a skill buy system kind of a thing, that you build the character mostly but leave like 5 skills off for them to spend where they want?
See, if it's a 2-hour game like this one, I'm not doing that.
Well, hear me out. Now, what if we go in a direction that you didn't expect, which is likely to happen, right? And I have 3 extra skill points on my character sheet, and it turns out, we didn't even plan on spelunking because that wasn't part of it. But now I've got these extra 3 points, and guess what? I've got 3 points in spelunking now.
I feel like that's really only relevant if you have a list of skills like you're making a D&D character, because there's a fair amount of catch-all that happens in Space 1889 and a lot of other games we play too. So it's not like if I don't have 1 dot in spelunking, I'm going to be making an unskilled test at a minus
no, maybe
whatever.
not in those examples, but there are lots of other games where it is relevant. So like in a World of Darkness game where if you had maybe 2 points in each category, mental, physical, social, of skill points to spend where however you want it. And maybe it's not even during gameplay. Maybe it's to customize it to make it a little bit more to your taste, to put whatever twist you want on it, because now it's more my character and I'm more bought into it.
Depends on the game.
Yeah, I don't know where to go with that, because that implies in my 2-hour game that there's going to be a lot of flexibility, and there really can't be.
But people are going, like, not that you can't steer the plot back to where you need it to go, but people are going to do weird, crazy sometimes stupid and
Players'
unexpected
jobs
things.
are to break plots.
Right.
That's
Drive
what
it
they
like a
do.
rental.
It's exactly that's the other thing is if in a one shot, you should know that they're going to drive it like a rental,
Yeah,
and they
that's
should.
fine. But like I said, if I've got a broad enough, that's one of the reasons why I chose this system is that it's got a broad enough dice pool system that if we need to, and without any real artificial shoehorning, you just roll your agility, you just roll your strength, and you've got some native ability to do. It's almost like Fate in the sense that characters are considered to be heroic and broadly speaking competent.
Right.
And so it's not like, oh, well, I'm sorry, you don't have a drive vehicle in that, so it looks like you're stuck.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. I think that's probably about it. I don't know if there's anything else. We kind of talked this one in circles as we've been known to do from time to time. So, do you guys have anything else to say about one shots?
They're great. Everybody should try a one shot once in a while just because they're fun.
I will say that I think that there's one other cool thing to do with one shots, and that is if you have a gaming group that is skeptical of a particular game or a particular system, that you might be able to persuade them for one session, a 4-hour deal or a 6-hour deal. Like, let's spend one game of our gaming sessions to try this game out and see if you guys like it, and then we can continue on if you do, and if you don't, well, at least we tried, right? And to use it that way, and that's probably the most ideal compromise. But if you get your players to agree to sit down and do that, you better make sure you've got your stuff together
Write
and
it
you
like a con
present
game.
a good scenario and make it shine, make it feature what the game does well.
Oh, there you go. Fair enough.
I'd say it's also a good chance to try out a different type of character. Again, dependent on system. So if let's
You
say
always play
I'm
the
always
wizard.
playing the fighter, a one shot's a perfect chance to be like, you know what, I haven't played a rogue before. Let me jump in and give that a shot.
Well, that's the other thing is if you're like spellcasters are sometimes very complicated to play, and in whatever your game version of a spellcaster is, if it's in Shadowrun, I've never played a Decker before. Oh, it's a one shot. Maybe I'll try the Decker, right? And it's a chance for you to play something where they've already built the character for you more than likely, and you know it's built at least semi-optimally so that you're going to be competent at what it is that character is supposed to do. Not that you have the wizard that can't do anything now because I didn't buy the right skills or take the right feats or whatever the situation is. So right on, broaden your horizons and try something new.
Or if you're a GM for a bold concept like a game of D&D that has only bards in the party, that could be a bold experiment.
It's been done.
I'm game.
Tired of it. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. All right, right on. So I think that'll do it for us this week. So hopefully you learned something from this. Maybe, probably not.
More importantly, help me learn something from
That's
this.
true.
And
That's
leave
true.
us some information.
So also, if you guys have any experience or cool stories or terrible failures, which sometimes failures are the most fun to talk about, of experiences with you guys running one-shots or games at cons or just any of that kind of experience that's in this kind of a vein, feel free to drop us a line on Twitter or leave something in the comments on justmorefix.com. You guys know where to find us. I say it about 8,000 times an episode.
or a missive over at the Facebook group, that would be good too.
Yeah. Yep. Anywhere. So all that stuff is linked from the main webpage, justmorefix.com. And I guess we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can find us at justonemorefix.com and follow us on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix.